And I'm sure you've got one of those annoying debt collection phone calls. They are on the rise seemingly, and you wonder, can you stop them? You are in luck. Consumer reporter Heather Sullivan is in search of some answers. We will share them with you, but with no further ado. It's the weekend for a lot of people. Well, it's the weekend for everybody.
I know what that means.
Yeah,
because
some of us work on the weekends, on those Saturdays and Sundays.
I like how you word that. Yes.
Yes.
Normally I work on the weekends, but
True.
I was able to do some moving around, and I'm gonna have the weekend off.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I think I'll be ready to deal with the heat.
And there's going to be a lot of it.
Yeah, we're piling it up, and then not only are we going to put the heat in here over Southeast Texas, there's going to be this haze, this Saharan dust that's been traveling across the. Let's embrace it. Let's welcome it. It came all the way from Africa.
The Saharan dust phenomenon never ceases to amaze me.
Right? I mean, it's a long ways to get here.
Yeah.
And there's going to be plenty of it. This is our introduction this evening of it, and then really Saturday is when we get it. Let's look at our tower cam right now. Not really, I don't think, picking up on the haze as much at the moment. Certainly looking for some partly cloudy to mostly cloudy skies. And I'll tell you what, it is hot out there. That feels like temperature is every bit accurate. Just walking across the parking lot, I was amazed at how hot it felt. And of course, a parking lot is even warmer than what these numbers would indicate, because of the heat that it retains. But those dew points of 76, that is a lot of humidity that's really piled in. And also, just let's not forget, early in the year like this, that sun doesn't take as long to really get to you. We've got that UV index at 12, which basically gives you about 5 to 10 minutes before you're going to run into some problems with some possible burning. We're looking at the need for all of the protection, glasses, sunscreen. Just get some shade and some air conditioning when you get a chance. That's a pretty fair assessment from now through the weekend. So it is steamy outside. It is hot. We've got isolated thunderstorms that are going to be popping up today. So this is a future cast when you see the little bit of green popping up just to the south there of Conroe. But now I'll show you what's actually happening right now on the Fox Red Storm Seeker radar. And you can see it's very similar to that future cast, right? It's just a couple little blips over there in the eastern half of Harris County, north of Barrett. There's a little bit of a downpour happening. I got caught in one. Actually, I got caught right behind one today. I was driving along. All of a sudden, the roads are all wet, and you could clearly see that it had rained like 2 minutes before I got there, and I just missed it, but it was a little bit of a downpour. Here's that Saharan dust. This is, again, a FutureCast product, so you can see how it really starts to move in tonight. Really thick tomorrow morning and in through most of the day on Saturday, and then still lingering around on Sunday. So tomorrow morning sunrise ought to be worth getting up if you want to take a look at it. Same thing with tonight's sunset. This dust really kind of adds all those particulates around. It really makes it look for some beautiful sunrises and sunsets. This high pressure dome that's really been kind of keeping us in just isolated storms. I know we've had a few downpours here or there, but the extended stormy weather, the widespread stormy weather has been all pushed up into the Oklahoma area. But now this changes this pattern, and we'll see some opportunities for some of that to head our direction a little bit. This is where we're expecting severe weather today across Texas and into Oklahoma. We get into the FutureCast for tonight or this afternoon. We'll keep the word steamy with us for a while. Very hot this afternoon, but the temperatures are going to go up even more once we get into tomorrow, but the rain chances lessen. Here comes the haze that's going to be with us lingering around. Summer heat is what we're looking for over the weekend. So rain chances over the next 5 days. There's definitely going to be some accumulation, favored to be a little bit further to the north, but watch how that's all really going to start happening on Tuesday, and then that's going to lock us in basically Tuesday through Friday next week. We're going to be looking at least a 50% chance, more like those 70% chances. We'll fine tune this once we get through the weekend a little bit, but overall just need to be ready for a much rainier pattern. And so, Tom, your day's off during the week next week, right? Mm-hmm. Looks like we're going to have some rain.
Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah, looks like we're starting to crank it up to have some showers and storms across the area.
You know, I'm generally okay with just kind of steady rain.
Sure.
Because we've certainly had lots of summers where we've gone weeks and weeks, months with nothing. So I'll take the steady.
It'll be rounds of rain, so I think this will be okay. I'm not looking for severe weather at the moment, so hopefully our yards will be happy.
Thanks, JD.
Yep.
Appreciate you. In Texas, a convicted felon can legally own a firearm with some restrictions. Abigail Dye covers crime for us in a lot of corners. She recently got a lot of questions about that very topic, so she went in search of answers. Here's what she can share.
It's legal for a convicted felon to own a gun here in Texas under certain circumstances. I posted a reel about this on Instagram and you all had a lot of questions. But guys, I'm not a lawyer, so I got one to give us some answers. Explain to me how a felon can legally possess a firearm in Texas.
So under Texas law, Abigail, a felon is prohibited from possessing a firearm. There's an exception to that rule. After 5 years pass from the date that they're either released from prison or released from supervision under community supervision, a felon can possess a firearm, but they have to do so in their home. They're still subject to prosecution from the federal government. The likelihood of them actually being prosecuted is slim, but they're still in violation of federal law.
How likely is it that the federal government prosecutes those kinds of cases?
It's highly unlikely. You rarely see them. The only time you would really see that case filed is if there was a search warrant of a residence or it was a person that was violating other federal laws.
So if a felon meets these requirements, how do they purchase a firearm?
The felon under Texas law is permitted to purchase a firearm from anybody that would sell them to them legally. The problem is that it's still a federal offense for a person to sell or transfer a firearm to a person that's prohibited from possessing a firearm under federal law, which is why you don't see Academy or other prominent gun stores selling items like that to felons.
Right. So if someone met these circumstances, they would have to buy from a private seller.
More likely they would have to buy from a private seller or somebody that they knew that was willing to transfer the gun to them.
Can a felon that meets these requirements have that gun in their car?
No, they cannot.
So if anyone meets these circumstances and they're interested in purchasing a firearm, what do you suggest they do?
I would advise them to consult with an attorney so that they can have a full understanding of the nuances and laws involved in possession of a firearm once you have a felony conviction.
All right, on to this. There is a manhunt underway for whomever's responsible for a driver who shot an 11-year-old boy, a boy who was just playing basketball with his brother. Houston police say someone in this is important, a light blue colored car pulled up to the pair, out the window, opened fire, and then sped off. Nobody knows why the shots were fired. The child, the boy, 11-year-old, shot in the stomach. We have not received an update on his condition. If you know anything about what happened here, maybe you can help police find out who they're looking for. You can call Crime Stoppers. Drop a dime anonymously, 713-222-TIPS. Police are also searching for the other people involved in an overnight shootout at an apartment complex in southwest Houston. Officers shot a teenager, a 15-year-old, who they say was armed with a rifle. Took several others in custody as well at the time. It seems like there's more violence, sadly, involving teens, juveniles. You've seen it. Let's talk about that with Houston City Councilman Willie Davis, at large, Position 2. Council member, good to see you.
Good to see you, Tom.
We were just talking. You ran on this topic amongst others, but this one is passionate to you.
Very.
So, you grew up 3rd Ward. Mm-hmm. You've been in Houston all your life. Mm-hmm. I've been here almost 27 years. Mm-hmm. It just seems to me the last handful of years, we are more and more seeing juveniles doing terrible things or having terrible things done to them. Is it just me, or do you think that's true?
Well, no, it is true. It is true. And one of the reasons why it's true, because we're living in a social society today that is everyone piggyback on other things. I've been in Houston all my life, grew up there in 3rd Ward, and I don't recall a time in my growing up that we had this kind of violence regarding, the shootings, teenagers with weapons and this type of thing. And you're absolutely correct. It's getting way out of control. One of the first thing I did, Tom, I ran on crime. I talked about safety. I talked about how we use prevention. And so my staff and I took a whole year pulling down the numbers, the stats on age groups of kids starting at 10 years old. And those numbers are alarming. So I took the opportunity of addressing it, and I'm still going to address it even more, because some people will say, well, it's gun violence. Well, that too, but along with that, it's gang violence. It's the lack of parental participation in safety, making sure that their children don't have access to weapons. There's other community and social aspects to what's going on. The teenage numbers of shootings is going up, and crime among our teenagers is going up, and I'm not advocating locking up our teenagers. What I'm advocating is that we come up with programs through working with the police, with our faith leaders in the city, as well as our community business and community leaders, on how we reach these young people to say to them that even if you don't fire your weapon, even if you get arrested with carrying a weapon, here's the deal. You're going to have a record, and that record's going to follow you, and it's going to distort your life for the rest of your life, maybe when you're getting older, more mature. So there's so many aspects to this, and I'm serious. I really am pleading with our community. The police department, HPD, is doing everything they can. The sheriff department, and we introduced an initiative, and they embraced it. I did a press conference on
Police, pastors, and people.
That's it.
That is your initiative.
That's initiative.
So the trick with something like that, it seems to me, is getting buy-in ultimately.
Yes.
Not only from the people who can influence.
Right.
I'm going to call them youngsters.
Yeah.
Because they're kids.
They're kids.
You and me, they're kids.
They're kids.
But you
absolutely.
told the Defender in an article last month, teens are walking around mugging, assaulting, and carjacking.
Exactly.
How do you, but it's a collective we.
It is.
How do we get over what appears to be just an indifference amongst that age group?
Well, I think what has happened is we can, we'll get a lot of people that will say, well, there are a lot of reasons around it, how we get beyond the differences, because in our program of the PPP, we're just not talking about the idea of police and pastors, but I also put the people in it, the community in it, because some of our kids, school is not even, they haven't really shut the school down for summer yet. And we're already seeing an uptick in this type of activity. So we want to be able to reach out to the community, and we come up with ways how we give them jobs, we give them things to do, rather than gathering up, ganging up on corners in apartment complex or whatever with the time they have. We want to reach that. And because I believe working with our police department, working with our sheriff department, other law enforcers like our constables and others, that we can really come up with something that would diffuse this effort.
There is real power to the words, real reality to the words, it takes a village.
Yes.
Regardless of whether it's been politicized by some or not, whatever.
Doesn't matter.
The concept that everybody buys
Absolutely.
in and a sense of community can help. Maybe not solve everything, but it can certainly help, don't you think?
Right, Tom. You're absolutely correct. That's my advocacy. Listen, I love my city. I love Houston. This is my home. I served as a pastor for 20 years at my first church, and then I served as a pastor for 4 years in Chicago. And that's one of the things that helped me to come back. When I came back to Houston in 2010, after leaving in 2006, and I didn't like what I saw. And that's when I had an opportunity. I spoke with Greg Grogan back during my run in 19, and I talked about it. And the homicide was low. And I said, hey, if we don't do something, this number going up. Well, the next year it went up over 400. We have to have vision. We have to have a vision. Where there is no vision, people perish. And we love our young people, and I want to see them have a life for themselves, to have an opportunity to serve,
Well, it starts with passion, and you are taking the lead on it.
Thank you so much.
Houston City Council Member Willie Davis, at-large position 2.
That's
appreciate
correct.
your wisdom, and we will continue to follow.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your time.
Glad to have you.
Sure.
So it appears that brouhaha, there's an old terminology, right? I'm going to go with this first. Sorry. It's a fluid environment here. Houston Fire Department is hosting the first ever graduation ceremony of the HFD Honor Guard Academy here. It's where firefighters from around the state have come to Houston, learning to drill, firefighter funeral operations. Sadly, that's an important thing as well for line of duty deaths. Want to listen in to this event that is ongoing right now.
And for those who have gone before us with honor, integrity, and dignity. I always say that it is a comfort to us because when I got into the fire department, the honor guard was there. And it's a comfortable feeling knowing on my last breath and then when it's my time to go, the honor guard will see me off. So congratulations, Class 01, Honor Guard Academy. You have made history, and the legacy you are building will live on, strong, steady, and proud. Thank you all. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So, at this time, it was something that we kind of changed at the last minute, but I felt that it was fitting. We decided to have one of the cadet members say a speech, and believe it or not, it was actually a competition between 4 of them, and I wish we had video of that, but he definitely earned a right to speak here. I'd like to now call to the stage Cadet Honor Guard member Mike Hastings at Magnolia Fire Department.
All right, this was definitely last minute, so I'm going to be reading. Thank you for having me up here. To think I'm only up here because my peers like my response to what honor means to me. As I look out, I see some incredible people. I see countless years of service. I see countless calls answered. And I see countless sacrifices of body, mind, and time, of blood, sweat, and tears. And I see families who have made sacrifices just the same. Families who have given up holidays, special occasions, and the one thing we all have an unknown amount of, time. To those who gave everything, and to the families who still give, we see you, we honor you, and appreciate you. We often find ourselves honored to work with someone, honored to have known someone, and as firefighters, honored to have served. I believe honor and respect are not the same, nor are they mutually exclusive. We often feel honored and we often pay respect, but it's those we respect whom we honor. And in some cases, one last time. That's why I joined the Honor Guard, to pay my respects, to honor those whose unwavering courage inspires those who remain, to give family, friends, and colleagues one last memory they can look back on with pride. I'll never forget my first encounter with the Honor Guard. A dear friend passed away while on active duty. His funeral service was elite. It was an incredible display of respect and honor. It was more than a ceremony, it was a vow, a promise that he would never be forgotten, that his memory, his legacy, would stand brighter than his passing. I'd like to give a special thanks to Commander Oscar Petraza and Assistant Commander Carlos Pasquale for allowing us to learn and grow from their experiences and wealth of knowledge. This academy has taught me so much, from how to march to performing casket guard. Effort that goes into honoring our fallen brothers and sisters. Thank you to the Houston Fire Department and to everyone with the Firefighter Support Network who spoke to our class, from the members of the CISM team, the Family Assistance Coordinator and their chaplains, and to the family of Marcelo Garcia, who shared what the Honor Guard meant to them in their darkest hour. On behalf of Houston Fire Department's Honor Guard Academy, class of 2025 Alpha, thank you.
You have been watching and listening to the first ever graduation ceremony of the HFD Honor Guard Academy happening now in Houston. All right. You've checked the calendar. You know that it is hurricane season, and a lot of people want to know, because they've been in the headlines, is Centerpoint ready for it? We're going to talk to somebody who knows the answers to that right after the break. We'll see you then. Hurricane season started for 2025 on June 1st, but if you've spent any time in and around Houston, in Texas, the hurricane season doesn't really pay super close attention to the dates here. And it doesn't take a hurricane necessarily to cause some trouble. But we have had our problems, and amongst the organizations, the businesses that has, well, quite literally been a bit in the hot seat over the last year is Centerpoint Energy, which has taken great strides over the last year since Hurricane Beryl to step up its efforts to strengthen the resiliency of the grid. To talk about that, Keith Stevens, Centerpoint's Vice President and Chief Communications and Marketing Officer. Good to see you, good sir.
Great to be here with you, Tom.
So we were just talking, you came to Centerpoint after Hurricane Beryl.
That is correct.
But you're well versed on what Hurricane Beryl did here.
Well versed on Hurricane Beryl. I joined in September, and already underway at that time was a series of improvements. We committed to do about 6 months worth of work in about 6 weeks in August. Mm-hmm. We heard the calls for change from our customers and communities. We went out and held 20 plus different community kind of meetings, open houses, town halls to get that feedback. We, like I said, we did, about 2,000 miles worth of vegetation management in about 6 weeks. So thinking about Texas, it's about 775 miles wide. We replaced about 1,000 poles. We put in about 350 what we call automation devices that help the grid to be more intelligent, more self-healing. When we got done with that, we said, hey, we're not done. There's more to come. And so we launched the second phase of the Greater Houston Resiliency Initiative. And this, in about 9 months, we have gone through and installed 25,000 new, more storm resilient poles. These are fiberglass poles and also class 5 wood poles that are rated to either 132 miles an hour or 110 miles an hour. We've gone ahead and done another 4,000 miles of vegetation management. So again, that's 6,000 miles of vegetation. That's back and forth across Texas 7 times. We've installed over 5,000 of these automation devices, and we're really excited about kind of the extra ability it has for us to be able to restore power to the grid without having to send somebody physically out to go restore something. So lots of great work that's been going on. We've hired our own meteorologist. Matt Lanza from Space City Weather has come and joined us. We put in 100 of our own weather stations so we can have our own situational awareness. And so we have done an incredible suite of work, about a year and a half's worth of work in about 9 or 10 months. And we set ourselves a really hard deadline for May the 31st for hurricane season to make sure that we were ready. We feel very confident and strongly that we are ready, but we're not done. There's more work to come.
That is a long list of things that, on behalf of people who are seeing this saying,
of course,
I was here last year and 2.2 plus million people lost power in a hurricane that wasn't the worst hurricane to ever roll through Houston. How did CenterPoint get itself to the spot where that happened and then necessarily needed to do everything that you have done over the last number of months?
If you look at the, first of all, we know there was way too many outages, first and foremost. We fully recognize that. If you look at the investments that we had been making over the course of the last many years leading up to Beryl, it was really about fortifying kind of the backbone of the electric system. So you see the large transmission towers, the metal lattice towers. Those have been significantly upgraded over the last many years. So when it came to the derecho as well as Hurricane Beryl, we did not see a lot of damage to our transmission system. Where we saw the damage was on the distribution side, where we were seeing outages in people's backyards, places that was very hard to get to. So we really redoubled that effort to make sure that we're focused on the distribution system. And that's really where all this work that I've been outlining in the Greater Houston Resiliency Initiative has been really focused, is on the distribution system. If you think about other, electric companies, utility companies that have faced other kind of, pivotal moments. If you look back in kind of Florida in the 05-06 timeframe, they had 7 hurricanes that hit that area over the course of about 18 months. And so, again, their customers and communities said, hey, you've got to do something different. And so they went and re-examined how they did things. They started using concrete poles and other things that work in Florida. Again, the transmission system took them 7 to 10 years to build out. We had already been making those investments in the transmission system. We're very confident that what we're doing on the distribution system will really have effects, and we've actually seen it through the kind of the third week of May. Based on all the improvements that we've made, we saw about 24 million less outage minutes this year than we had seen in previous years on average.
Stuff that you would just statistically see
exactly
under the normal course of weather.
Absolutely.
Something that might have normally gone out with a line of storms did not this time.
Absolutely. People point back to the storm that rolled through kind of Memorial Day night into that Tuesday morning and said, well, wait, there was 160 plus thousand people that were out of power. Also, if you went and looked at our weather stations, there were some areas that had, 60, 70 mile an hour winds. So winds that are approaching hurricane speed. What we were able to do for those folks that are our customers and that we're absolutely getting up every day really focused on what's best for them, we got all that 167,000 customers back in less than 20 hours. So when we think about the improvements, we want the outages, first of all, to be fewer. We want them to be smaller and affect less people. But if there are outages based on the improvements we're making, we want to be able to restore those customers quicker, and that's what we're trying to do.
Got a little less than a minute here, but you say something that I think is an important dose of reality for people to remember. Is that when these storms come, and they're going to come, whether it's a line of storms or it's a hurricane or it's a whatever, fill in the blank, there will be people who lose power. And when that happens, it's not always necessarily to fair, well, Good job, Center Point. A little healthy dose of sarcasm there.
Sure.
People need to understand that these things do cause problems. The question becomes how significant is the damage to get things back on?
Exactly. Like I said, we want to be able to respond more quickly and get folks back into lights more quickly. When you think about Harris County and you look at all the counties across the U.S., we have a perfect rating from FEMA for climate vulnerability. So we have a higher rating than Miami and other locations. We have a perfect 100 score because we have hurricanes, we have derechos, we have storms. We also have ice occasionally. People will remember Uri, right?
Sadly so, yeah.
So all those things come into play. So really we're focused on making sure that there are fewer outages, affect less people, and then when there is an outage, we get people back up quicker.
On behalf of everybody who likes to have their lights on, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to delivering for our customers.
Keith, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. I started talking about this a moment ago, not inappropriately, inadvertently at the wrong time. Now's the time. You've seen President Trump, Elon Musk going at it in social media. It's become a watching thing across the country, and lots of response as well. Doug Luzader reports from Washington.
Well, this quickly escalated into a very public feud between the president and Elon Musk after an unlikely political alliance that seemed to defy the odds.
I'd give it to Elon as a presentation from our country.
Hard to believe that just a week ago, President Trump was handing Elon Musk a golden key to the White House. Now a bitter falling out.
I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
And that was diplomatic compared to what was playing out on social media. Trump wrote, "I asked him to leave. I took away his electric vehicle mandate, and he just went crazy." Musk, initially angry over the deficit impact of Trump's so-called big, beautiful budget bill, had a flurry of posts on X. The Trump tariffs will cause a recession in the second half of this year. Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. And perhaps most stinging, without me, Trump would have lost the election. At one point, he even seemed to back impeachment. One lawmaker didn't hold back on Musk.
You've lost your damn mind.
Trump threatened to cut Musk's government contracts. Musk threatened to halt some of his work with NASA. But in the meantime, the president's domestic agenda is now teetering on Capitol Hill.
I think one of the big questions now with this big, beautiful bill is whether some of these conservative hardliners in Congress are going to follow along with Trump, or if Speaker Johnson can hold this together.
But in the battle between Musk and Trump, for some Republicans, this is a no-brainer.
Anybody who's going to be intimidated by somebody politically whose last name isn't Trump is barking up the wrong tree.
Could a thaw be coming? Maybe. Politico reports the two may talk on the phone later today. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
Breaking news now coming in from the Harris County Criminal Justice Center in downtown Houston with a verdict after a jury has found Oscar Rosales guilty for the death of Harris County Precinct 5 Corporal Charles Galloway. He had been accused of shooting Galloway during a traffic stop 3 years ago. Yesterday in court, Rosales admitted to killing the corporal, saying that he thought that the corporal was a security guard with whom he had argued the night before. Either way, he killed the man. The punishment phase begins on Monday. It is CPR and AED Awareness Month. It's a critical reminder and life-saving skills that really anyone can develop, and it's an important thing. It's important knowledge to have. Houston's CPR and safety lady, Gail Gould, shares some reminders that are good to know.
Thank you always for coming in and sharing such an important topic with us. It is always important regardless of the time of year.
Yes.
First and foremost, in a CPR situation, emergency situation, what exactly should you be doing?
Well, what you want to do is if someone loses consciousness and they're unresponsive, they're not responding to you, the first thing you want to do is call 911, absolutely, or send someone to call 911. And then you're going to check for breathing, just like this. You're going to look down their chest, you're going to check for breathing 5, maximum 10 seconds. If they're not breathing normally, not breathing at all, they need CPR. So I'll give a little demonstration here. So you're going to take one arm out front, other arm on top, stack one hand right on top of another. And you could do this over thin clothing, right in between the two nipples on the vertical axis of the sternum. And you're just gonna push hard and fast until advanced help arrives.
And it's so important to know that hard is the key, and you very
Yes.
likely, if you're doing right, are going to hear ribs cracking.
Yes.
But keep
Yes.
going, and that's actually important. That means you're doing it right.
Yes, if you don't push hard enough, it will not be effective. So you want to push hard and fast. And what you're doing is you're literally shunting blood up to the brain to keep the brain alive. You know, the brain starts to die after about 4 minutes. So you're literally keeping their heart, brain, and lungs alive until advanced help arrives. And you can absolutely save a life.
What about with the baby?
With the baby, it's the same thing. If the baby is unresponsive, whoops, so you're going to tap the baby's foot, and the baby's not responding to you, you're going to send someone to call 911. Melissa, call 911, get the AED. Then I'm just going to check the baby for breathing, 5 to 10 seconds. If he's not breathing normally, not breathing at all, he's in cardiac arrest. He needs CPR. So for a baby, I'm going to use 2 fingers. I'm going to place my 2 fingers on the vertical axis of the sternum, and I'm going to give 30 chest compressions. And then after 30 chest compressions, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to tilt his head back, and I'm going to give him 2 puffs of air. So it's a little different for a baby. Main cause of unintentional death of babies under the age of 1 is obstructed airway, meaning they choked on something.
When do you, I know in some situations you may give air to an adult as well too. When do you decide when and when not to do that as well?
When do you decide? I'm not following you.
No, you were saying you were blowing air into a baby as well. Do you do that with an adult as well?
So glad you asked that. There's hands-only CPR, which you could do to anyone 10, 11, 12, and older. And then under the age of 10, you want to go ahead and breathe for them. So there's 2 ways to do CPR now.
Let's get quickly to choking.
Yes, so choking, around 4,000 people die a year from choking. Unfortunately, 3,000 of the 4,000 are kids. So if someone is coughing forcefully, they can speak, they can breathe, they are not choking. It's when someone stops talking, they can't cough, a very weak, ineffective cough, they're turning pale, they're turning blue.
What do?
You make a fist. You place your thumb inside the fist. Go ahead and try this. Place it right above your navel.
Oh, above the navel.
Right above the navel. Other hand on top. And give yourself an inward upper thrust, almost like you're trying the Nike swoosh. In and up. This is what you do to anyone over the age of 1 who's choking.
If you have ever received one of those annoying debt collection calls, particularly if you don't owe anybody anything, they can be annoying for sure. You are not alone. They are getting more and more prevalent. Consumer reporter Heather Sullivan notes that Houston is one of the top metropolitan areas for these calls. She gets some smart sense from an expert on how to deal with them.
A new report just came out by Number Barn where they analyzed 1 million complaints that came into the Federal Trade Commission. And they say complaints about debt collection calls have gone up 150% just over the last year. Houston has the 4th highest amount of complaints about debt collection calls. And the average debt in Houston, almost $58,000. So we're joined by Thomas Nietzsche with Money Management International, a nonprofit credit counseling agency. Thanks so much for being with us, Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about, you're on the front lines of this, people turning to Money Management International for help with debt. So what are you hearing from people about, I mean, I know we've been dealing with inflation, but what are you hearing from people about why we're seeing this rise in debt and now debt collection calls?
Yeah, I think it's a number of factors. The inflation over the last couple of years has certainly been part of that. And then also, for folks carrying student loans, those student loans going back into repayment has created an added pinch on people trying to figure out how they're going to balance, all these obligations and those student loans going back in to repayment, adding that back into their budget. So yeah, I can see where, since those student loans have gone into repayment, I can see where there'd be an uptick in the number of folks that are now getting collection calls as other things may fall past due as they try to prioritize those student loans, because those certainly don't go anywhere. But yeah, I think, in general, it's really important to make sure that the debt is legitimate, make sure you're not getting scammed, make sure you ask for proof that you actually owe the debt. Check how long the debt has been outstanding. It's possible that you could be past the statute of limitations on the debt, in which case, you are no longer legally responsible for it.
And let me
So that's
ask you, what's
yeah.
the length of time that what's the red flag if it's been too long?
Yeah, so it's between 3 and 10 years, depending on the state. Let me check for Texas real quick. 4. So in Texas, it's 4 years. It's a statute of limitation. So if it's older than that, you really need to be extra careful, because there are things you can do that can reset the statute. In other words, if you make a promise to pay, for example, that can actually restart the clock for another 4 years. So you want to understand all about statute of limitations on debt if your debt is older than that. So make sure to do some homework to understand what your rights and responsibilities are as it pertains to that type of debt. But if it's not that old and you're trying to figure out a way to take care of it, there's a number of options that you may have depending on your financial situation. You may be able to settle the debt for less than you owe. You negotiate on that principal amount. And in some cases, in more drastic cases, if you truly can't afford to pay and you've got a lot of outstanding debt, you might be a candidacy for bankruptcy. So you may need to seek legal advice and see what your legal options are. But above all, just want to make sure that in the debt relief space that you're really careful about scams and unscrupulous players, because there are many of them out there. We saw this a lot during the Great Recession, right? Where, the more pressure there is on the economy overall, the more scammers and bad players pop up in the debt relief space. So you really want to be careful. Make sure you do your due diligence. In the financial services space, anytime you're doing business, make sure you're checking reviews, seeing what other consumers are saying about the company, because a little an ounce of prevention, right, worth a pound of care. So make sure you do your due diligence, understand who you're working with and how they work, because there are a lot of options. There's debt consolidation loans, settlements, debt management programs. There's a lot of confusion in the space around what options are available. And so you want to make sure you understand what option you're going to pursue based on the situation that you're in.
Well, what I want to ask you is, can you give us like a tip or an example of, you get the phone call and you're not sure whether it's scam or legitimate. What do you say so that you're not triggering anything? Like, how do you handle that call so that you're not caught off guard?
Yeah, basically, you really want to start the conversation with, what is this about? Don't give any information, but make sure you're asking for information. And then say, ask for proof of the debt. Tell them you want to validate the debt is actually yours, and ask them that they send you information in the mail around what type of debt this is, what was it, and proof that you actually owe it. so that you can make an informed decision based on what you receive. And then obviously, if you don't receive anything, there's a chance that it might have been a scam. So definitely proceed with caution when you're contacted about old debt. And especially if you're contacted through digital, like through social media or through texts, that's a big red flag. Typically, they're not going to contact you that way. So you want to make sure that you don't take any action based on an incoming text or social media message.
Yeah, that's very good to know. Um, can you talk a little bit about your rights? Because I think a lot of people may not realize that they have rights about not being harassed by a debt collector.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's illegal to threaten somebody with jail time or say that you're sending the police to their house or calling them after hours, very early in the morning or very late at night. They have to call between certain hours. They have to be respectful. And if you feel like those rights are being violated, you have recourse. You can file a complaint with your state's attorney general's office and with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Better Business Bureau. So if you feel like you're being harassed, those are some courses of action you can take.
Okay. Well, now let's talk about ways to try and deal with the debt. I mean, obviously that means that you're probably already struggling to keep up with bills in general. So, what would be your advice to someone to try and start dealing with it, managing it, some of their options?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the type of debt, as far as what options you have available and what courses of action you might take. For unsecured debt, if it's an older debt, they're usually willing to settle on that. So it's often a good idea to save up money over time and then offer them a settlement, say half of however much you owed. Once you validated that the debt is actually yours and it's not outside the statute of limitations. For other types of debt, say medical debt, for example, you may want to check and see if you're eligible for charity care. Even if the debt has been sent to a collection agency, sometimes they can retroactively apply that and pull it out of collections and apply that charity care. We partner with a nonprofit called Dollar For to help people understand, if they may qualify for that. So, it really depends. And then, of course, if it's secured with property like a home or an automobile, obviously that gets more complicated because there can be a repossession or foreclosure involved in that. And oftentimes, like with the foreclosure, sometimes a bankruptcy is the only way to stop that if you're trying to stop that and get a restructured and get back on track with that. So it really depends upon the type of debt. But for unsecured debt, for debt that's older, a settlement can often be a good solution because at that point, your credit has already been damaged. So there's, not any harm in settling it for less than you owe at that point. And it can make it a little bit more affordable. But you do need to keep in mind that while you're saving up the money, the creditors do have the right to still proceed with collection activity, garnishment or getting a court summons. You never want to ignore that because if you ignore it, they'll get what's called a default judgment, and they can get a garnishment against you. So you want to make sure that if you're having a financial hardship and you get a court order that you appear and explain your situation and try to come to an agreement or a settlement at that point.
I want to let people know about credit counseling and how that can help. So can you walk us through the process for someone who might be getting some of these calls?
Sure. So another factor is, understanding your budget, understanding what options are available to you and kind of getting a financial snapshot of where you're at so we can understand what options are best based on all those factors, the type of debt, how much you owe, the status of the debt. So the way credit counseling works is we do a financial assessment to gather a lot of financial information, your income, your expenses, assets, your creditors. And then by gathering all that information, we can determine what might make sense for you. In some cases, a debt management program could help by reducing interest rates to create a plan to be out of debt within about 4 years. On average, that reduces the interest rates down to about 7%. For debt that's in collections, we may be able to arrange a settlement where we help arrange a settlement with those creditors as well. So it really depends upon the status of the debt and a lot of nuance as to your ability to repay, and how aggressively the collection agencies are coming after you or if you're being sued. Because, obviously if you're at a later stage of delinquency, you might be, looking at having to seek legal advice and see what your legal options are. But in general, we want to try to help people before it gets to that status. So if you're someone who's concerned about making your next payment or if you've just started to fall behind, that's a really good time to reach out because we can do a lot of preventative care, and help you avoid reaching that later stage of collection activity.
Yeah, and as I introduced in the beginning, Your Money Management International, which is a nonprofit, any advice to help people choose a good credit counselor? Because we know also there are some that might get you into worse trouble.
Right. Yeah, basically you want to look for an organization that's accredited by the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. You always want to check the Better Business Bureaus and the review sites to make sure they've got a good reputation. There's a debt-free community on Reddit, which is really great for, you can talk to other people who are actively in debt management programs to see who they're using, any that they might suggest avoiding. And that's a great platform because it's obviously anonymous, right? So you can collect information. ChatGPT is another one where we've seen a lot of people coming to us from ChatGPT recently, where they're having a conversation with AI about their debt situation, and ChatGPT is recommending us. So that's another good place where you can start to gather information to educate yourself without having that same worry about any sort of judgment or stigma or shame, that sort of thing that we know keeps a lot of people from opening up and having those conversations.
Yeah, that's really interesting that ChatGPT is recommending, and I'm so glad to hear
Yeah.
that not because we know that it can make mistakes. So I'm glad to hear it's not, sending people in the wrong direction.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a great way it can help you create a budget and help you understand the differences between debt settlement and debt management programs and debt consolidation loans. It's a really great tool that hopefully more people will start leveraging.
Yeah. And that I think although is a great tool too that can come out of credit counseling is learning to set a budget, keep a budget. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you guys help people moving forward?
Yeah, so we establish a budget so that we understand, so that the consumer can also understand exactly where their money's going and make sure that their money is working for them, right? That's the ultimate goal. And a lot of people don't like the B word, budget, right? But we try to create a spending plan and encourage people to do that on a regular basis, once a month or at least every couple of months. Make sure you're checking in with yourself so that you're staying true to that budget and working towards your financial goals. But essentially, we're just looking to help people find ways to save, and to reduce the amount of interest that they're paying on any unsecured debt that they're carrying, so that they can reach debt free. Because it's a really great feeling when you're able to make that final payment and be out from under that debt, because we know it is really stressful.
And as I was mentioning in the beginning of this, the report found there was a 150% increase in debt collection complaints. And I know that you guys have been seeing an uptick in people just reaching out for help. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing? And we've talked in the past that it was millennials that are being most affected right now. Are you still seeing that trend?
Yeah, so last year we saw about a 40% increase in the number of Texans reaching out for debt counseling. Among them, their debt was up about 7% year over year, totaling over $30,000 per new consumer. And then their living expenses were also increasing year over year. And then, yes, we're seeing that the millennial generation represents almost half of all new clients that are coming to us for help with their debt, which I think just reflects the unique strain that generation's under. A lot of them are still carrying student loans, so those are coming back online. They may be trying to, purchase a home, maybe trying to care for children, and older millennials are probably maybe helping older family members as well. So there's sort of that sandwich generation factor going on. And then there's just been that prolonged period of increased inflation, high cost of living. So I think that's really what's driving those folks to us right now. But yeah, we continue to see an upward trend in, some of these financial indicators that really indicate some distress. Higher budget deficits, meaning the amount of money people have at the end of the month after they pay all their expenses, that number has continued to trend upward, unfortunately, and higher levels of debt. And obviously interest rates right now are higher than they have been. So once you have, $30,000 of unsecured debt, that can be really difficult to pay it down when so much of that payment is going towards interest. So credit cards can be a very valuable tool. They can even, pay you back in rewards, but they're very easy to get in over your head, especially if you face any financial uncertainty or challenges. What we usually see is there's some sort of payment shock that happens in somebody's life. Either someone in the household experiences an illness or an underemployment and unemployment. And that's the point at which many people turn to us, is when they've been carrying the debt for a long time and they've been managing it okay on their own, but some sort of payment shock happens in their life and sort of breaks the camel's back, so to speak. And that at that point is when they usually turn to us.
Okay. And lastly, how can people reach out and find out more about Money Management International if they'd like to?
Yeah, so the best way is online at moneymanagement.org. We found that a lot of people are hesitant to talk to somebody about their situation, even if it is anonymously. So you can do the process entirely online. We have online counseling available and a chat feature available at moneymanagement.org. So that's a great way to get started. And you can compare options and see what's available for you.
All right, Thomas, thank you so much. We appreciate all of your insights.
Yep, anytime. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your time. I'm Tom Zizka. Glad to have you with us. Anthony Antoine picks up at the top of the hour with more Houston Live and Local.
know what I mean? Like, and I do this for a living. It's like, all right, welcome to Houston Live and Local here at 3 o'clock. I'm Anthony Antoine. Thank you so much for joining us here on the stream. So whether you are watching on Fox Local or Fox26Houston.com, we are happy to have you here for the next half hour as we tell you guys what's going on in and around our area. So today is D-Day, so of course we have to remember that day as well. We got a major recall involving air conditionings, and if you're in Houston, man, it is hot outside. So you want to make sure that's working. And we are following a teenager who was shot by Houston police here. We'll have a report on that in just a little bit. But it is Friday, and as you guys get ready for the weekend, you got to look at the forecast to see how you can maneuver around the city. So let's start here with meteorologist John Dawson to fill us in on what's happening.
I'm going to call you out for what you just said.
What did I say?
Houston Live and Local, where we tell you what's going wrong in Houston.
Did I say wrong?
And then you corrected it, but I was
going
like...
going on.
Tell you what's going wrong. That's what we do.
If we're being real, if we're being honest, like, I know, right? We also tell you what's going wrong in the city, too.
No, it was fun. You corrected. You paused it, but I thought you were going there.
I probably was, in all honesty. What's happening, man? How you
doing? Have you
been
sweating today? Have you been outside?
I have not been outside. I've been ducking and dodging, as much as I can.
No, it's hot.
Did you get in the garden?
So hot. No, it was kind of a busy, well, I was sort of a slow morning till I kind of got running. But we went, wife and I went to the pool and swam laps. So did our cardio indoors. And then had the HEB and
I love the HEB.
I know,
Shout out to the HEB.
I tried to turn. It's curbside, okay. So like I tried to turn the car off. I tried to turn the car off and sit like with the windows down, and I was like, I'm not doing this. Sorry, planet, but I'm gonna have to run this car while I'm sitting here in the air conditioning going. Okay, let's jump into our tower cam looking outside. We've been talking about this haze, and it'll be rolling in later on this evening, but it's hard to find right now in the downtown tower cam. Looking back sort of towards the medical center, I believe. We're looking at those temperatures in the lower 90s, but those dew points in the mid 70s. That means it feels like 102. And that's assuming that you're not like standing on a parking lot. Like if you're in a parking lot, you could just crank that up even more. It's so hot right now, and it's going to be even hotter as we move into the weekend. If you could find some shade, and if it's perhaps in some grass or something, then maybe you can get a little bit of relief. I think you need to plan for some time to get into the air conditioning as well. Our UV index at 12. That means you only get about 5 or 10 minutes out there before you really start to feel it, and it starts to impact you. So make sure you're using the appropriate precautions there. And it is hot, it is humid, and it is steamy. We'll be in the mid 90s today, and then, well, probably lower 90s on the thermometers, and then we'll be rolling into the weekend in the upper 90s. So the Fox Red Storm Seeker radar, you see those quick little blips that you see. That's the kind of rain, those little downpours, really, really short, give you a brief break from the heat, but then you steam it all up a little bit. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the rest of the day. We do continue to track the Saharan dust on our futurecast here. It arrives this afternoon late into the evening. Should be a beautiful sunset. We're looking for another beautiful sunrise and sunset on Saturday as there's more around. But just keep that in mind, is if the air pollution is something that impacts you, kind of like an allergy or something, or it gets in your lungs, take your precautions, a little extra time indoors. This high pressure is going to break down. We've been pushing the stormy weather up into North Texas and West Texas and over into Oklahoma and other parts north of the Red River, but that's going to change over the weekend, and next week is a much rainier pattern overall. Here's where we're looking for severe storms to possibly be popping up later on today. You'll notice Houston left out of that, and we're keeping it hot, keeping it steamy. As we look at the rain possibilities for the next 5 days, you'll notice that really we're not looking for really measurable rain until we get to Tuesday. And then that's the beginning of a long stretch. So when you look at the 7-day forecast, really Tuesday through Friday or maybe even further down the line, it's that 70 to 80% chance of showers and storms, waves of rain. So we'll just kind of continue to tweak this forecast as we get through the weekend and into next week, but just kind of change the mindset. That hot and dry, meaning a lot of rain, that's going out, and we're going to be looking at a much more of a wetter pattern overall. And a lot of us are excited about that. We get the yards, and little cooler temperatures. Yeah. But I know there's people trying to do summer things that don't need the showers and the storms too. So just kind of put that all together for your next week's plans.
And at the same time, when you get so many days of rain, are we looking at the potential for flooding?
It can add up, sure.
Yeah.
No, at this point, it's hard to say yes or no on that, but it's a possibility certainly this time of year.
All right, JD, my man. Appreciate him as always, bringing us a look at the forecast. Thank you. We'll get back to him later on today in our evening newscast at 5 and 6. All right. Police are searching for other suspects involved in an overnight shootout. It happened at an apartment complex in southwest Houston. As of right now, officers shot a teenager they say was armed with a rifle. Fox 26's Jillian Hartman has what we know on this story here so far.
A chaotic shooting here outside the Casa Maya apartments caught on camera. Houston police say gunfire broke out between multiple people as officers arrived on scene, and in the end, a 15-year-old boy was shot by police. Now, this happened around 2 this morning here near Cinnamon Lane. Police say when they got here, they heard shots ring out and saw several people running through the complex, firing at each other. And a neighbor tells me that this was very scary.
It's the first time I've ever heard it like that, where it's just like a lot of gunshots in one night.
Police say the 15-year-old allegedly fired a gun. Officers in returned fire and hitting him twice. That teenager then took off and was found in an apartment. The teen's parents actually alerted police that their son was hurt and needed assistance. The boy was then rushed to Texas Children's Hospital, and he's in stable condition right now. We know 2 other people were taken into custody, a woman and a male. A rifle was also recovered here on scene. Police say they are combing through some surveillance footage that shows people shooting and shouting at each other. Detectives right now are investigating this shooting. I'm Jillian Hartman, Fox 26 News.
All right, Jillian, thank you so much. In other news now, Fox 26's Jonathan Mejia is following this story that has made some national headlines here. So ICE detained a 4th grader from Southern California, but the boy is at a detention center along with his father in Texas. Let's get some details on that. Jonathan.
ICE San Antonio confirmed with me the family's immigration history here in the United States. July 10th, 2021, the parents entered illegally into the country with the child. 14 months later, they had their first order of removal to Honduras. Now, the family decided to appeal that decision, and on August 22nd, 2023, an immigration judge dismissed that appeals, meaning the father and son had to leave the country immediately, but they didn't do so. Forward 2 years from now, May 29th, 2025, the father and son were taken into custody by ICE Los Angeles, and May 30th, the very next day, they were sent over to a family detention center in Dilley, Texas, pending the order of removal to Honduras. Upon the child missing days in school, the Torrance Unified District told Fox 26 they were actively working with the family and authorities to understand the facts of the situation. And when we talk about a specific case here that has caught national headlines here about a young boy and his father, but you're saying this is normal, this is happening every day.
We see this happening all the time, and families are arrested. And you know that Texas has one of the family detention centers in Dilley, Texas, and this is where they're holding families.
Let's talk about what we're seeing here with the Trump administration wanting to hit a daily quota of 3,000 arrests. How is this going to be impacting those who are living in fear?
The problem with this new directive is that it's more aggressive than earlier measures that they had. And because they had always said this is about the criminals and those who can affect the security and the livelihoods of U.S. citizens and the security. And all of a sudden, we are arresting anyone. It's anyone that has a deportation order. Now, we're not talking about criminals. Is that it leads to wrongful detentions. And we have seen what has happened with some that have been denied due process and deportations of American citizens and legal permanent residents as well in the past. So efforts to add spaces to detention centers have led to protests and arrests.
ICE is encouraging those who are in the country illegally to self-deport through the CBP Home app. They're offering free flights to their native countries and $1,000. Reporting in the newsroom, Jonathan Mejia, Fox 26 News.
All right, Jonathan, thank you so much. Well, we got to talk about Sean Diddy Combs. That trial is in its 4th week. I should say wrapping up its 4th week here, as it is Friday after all. Let's get to this courtroom and show you guys what's been happening there. So the trial on the stand was another former girlfriend of Diddy's. testifying against him for a couple of days now. The woman is being referred to in court simply as Jane to protect her identity. She shared very similar experiences like his other ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, who testified earlier in the case. Now, this woman, again, Jane, says that Combs repeatedly pressured her into relations with sex workers even though she didn't want to. She also talked about being traumatized from an incident in 2016 where Combs allegedly dangled her over a balcony of a high-rise in Los Angeles for 10 to 15 seconds. And it was not a good time here for this to happen. Nearly 2 million air conditioners are being recalled. The Consumer Product Safety Commission says Midea manufactured window units sold under brands like Frigidaire and Insignia may grow mold due to a drainage issue. There are over 150 reports of mold and nearly 20 cases of health problems, including respiratory infections. These units were sold at stores like Costco and Best Buy. The company is offering free repairs and refunds. Well, more families out there are looking for non-toxic ways to clean their kitchen, especially if they have someone living in the house who may be sensitive to products like that. Here's consumer reporter Heather Sullivan, who spoke with a local expert to help guide us and give us some more insight.
We're talking about non-toxic cleaning in your home and how it can help to keep your family healthy. So we are joined by Allison Evans. She's an expert in this area. She's even created a cleaner. We'll talk about that in a moment. But we're also going to talk about some DIY ways that people can clean in their home and help keep their family safe as well. So first, let's just talk about why it's important to try and have fewer toxins, I guess, in our cleaners.
Yes, I think what so many people do not realize is that when we clean, our indoor air can be up to 5 times more toxic than the outdoor air. So the ironic part is we're bringing these disinfectants and cleaners in efforts to create a safe home, but a lot of times they're undermining our health.
Okay, and it can have a lot of effects on our health.
Absolutely. I mean, it is linked to asthma, allergies, endocrine disruption, infertility, even cancer, but even just headaches and skin irritation.
Okay. Well, so what kinds of things should we be looking for when we're choosing cleaners?
It's a great question. So if a cleaner has any sort of warning or danger sign on it, toss it. If it's a disinfectant or if it has any sort of synthetic fragrance, you can turn it around and usually it'll say the word fragrance or parfum. It just doesn't belong in your home.
Okay, so once you have something that's non-toxic, what kinds of things can we clean with it?
Well, honestly, non-toxic cleaners should be very simple. It should be going back to basics. You don't have to have a separate cleaner for every job in your home, right? So if you have a gentle surfactant, like a Branch Basics, but there are others as well, or even just a pure soap, you can pretty much tackle every cleaning need in the home.
Wow, okay. Can you show us?
Sure, absolutely. So I have fresh berries here, but from the store, need to be washed. So in order to get those pesticides off, we can spray it directly with a gentle surfactant and then rinse. So it should be safe enough to then eat after sprayed on food. And then I have my baby bottle, so just used by my baby this morning. And again, so important to not have these harsh chemicals that are adhering to the bottles when baby drinks. And then everything from that to just simply cleaning the countertops.
So you can really use one cleaner for all these different purposes.
Absolutely, and it works.
And we want to talk a little bit about, because you're an entrepreneur here in Houston and you created your own product to help people.
Yes, exactly. So I have a cleaning product line called Branch Basics alongside my best friend and my aunt. And it's really all based on this one concentrate. So this concentrate, when diluted with water, can be used to replace virtually every cleaning product in the home. So we have a bathroom spray, streak-free, and we have this all-purpose. And this concentrate fills each of these bottles 3 times along with the foaming hand soap. And then the Oxygen Boost is like a non-toxic scouring agent.
And this is now available on Target.
It is, Target and Target.com, yes.
All right. Well, Allison Evans, thanks so much for sharing the tips with us.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
In Houston, Heather Sullivan, Fox News.
All right, Heather, thank you so much. Hey, we got to take a quick commercial break, but today is D-Day, so we'll take a look at what's happening coming up next. All right, as you know, it is hurricane season. It started June 1st, and you probably heard of storm chasers, but have you heard of cyclone chasers? Well, meteorologist John Dawson had an opportunity to speak to a guy who is doing exactly that as he tracks down tropical storms.
Hurricane season has now officially started, and I'm excited to be able to have a conversation with my friend Josh Morgerman. He is a professional hurricane chaser, but it's even more than hurricanes. He's international. He's chasing cyclones all across the globe. And so, Josh, welcome. Give us a quick intro on what you do if somebody hasn't had a chance to see what you in action.
So I'm a pro storm chaser, and what makes me unique is I only do hurricanes. I don't chase other kinds of weather. No tornadoes, no blizzards, no nothing. Just hurricanes, but I do it all around the world. North, south, east, west hemispheres. I'm everywhere hunting down hurricanes.
All right, I want to start briefly with a look at last year. And of course, we had Beryl here in the Houston area. Just kind of give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about 2024.
You know, Beryl for me was actually the big surprise, and I think it was a surprise for a lot of your viewers. I saw a lot of folks in Metro Houston afterward were like, whoa, wait, that was a Cat 1? And it's like, yep, that was a Cat 1. And the reason it felt so strong where you guys were, well, one, it was strengthening as it came in, but the other thing was, it shows that it's not just about how strong a hurricane is, it's how it aims. And that one aimed, so you guys got the strongest part. You guys got what's called the right front quad. You guys, the city of Houston got nailed by that thing. And that's why it felt so intense. And I'll tell you, I was down in Matagorda where it came ashore, had a good kick there too. I was really surprised by it.
And really, just the Gulf Coast, the Gulf has just been a hot spot this year, or recently. Lots of hurricanes. You've actually been a little more active in the U.S. than you normally are, because normally your kind of focus is more international.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When you look at hurricane patterns around the world, they go through sort of 10 to 40 year cycles. So a certain area will be kind of dead for 10 to 40 years, and then it'll be busy. Unfortunately, right now, the Gulf is just crazy busy. It started kind of in the late teens, but especially look at 2020, especially. And then since then, look at all of the big hurricane landfalls on the Gulf Coast, from Texas all the way to Florida. It's just year after year, it's nonstop, and it's not normal. We're sort of at an historical peak right now. Well, what's interesting is in other parts of the world, actually, it's the opposite. Things are kind of quiet.
Wow, that is it. I guess I haven't really thought about the rest of the world being quiet because, again, the Gulf Coast has been so active. As we kind of begin to wrap up our conversation a little bit, Josh, let's talk about that world record holder that you are. Let's talk about how busy you have been over your career, and the fact that I think the number is 80, if I remember correctly. 80 is the number of eye wall penetrations that you've had in cyclones. So tell us a little bit about a moment or two that you, of course, easily recall from that experience of yours.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've been in 80 hurricanes, and believe it or not, they don't blur together. Each one is a very unique experience. 5 of them were Category 5s, and I would say that the 2 that really stick out in my head, one was Super Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, which is the equivalent of what we'd call a Category 5 hurricane. I was in a big city in the Philippines, and the whole city at the height of the storm went underwater. Giant storm surge swept the city. I had to jump in the water to rescue people, and there were thousands dead. And that one really burned in my mind because I'd never seen that kind of human impact. And then the other one, the really cataclysmic one, would be Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas a couple of years ago. It's tied with the 1935 Labor Day hurricane in Florida as being the strongest known hurricane impact in North America. Came ashore with sustained winds of 185 miles an hour, and I was right in the little town Marsh Harbor on Great Abaco Island where it came in. And man, let me tell you, winds at that speed are frightening. I was in a little concrete building, and I felt like the whole thing was just going to collapse from the force of those winds.
Well, Josh, you're such a historian. I'm always reminded when we start having conversations how much of a historian you are and how much I enjoy conversations with you. And we're going to be able to talk more about your house that you built, a hurricane-resistant house that you've built. You've been in there for a year. We're going to be able to talk more about that on other editions of Forecasting with Friends, so people can look those up. But I do want to just give people an opportunity to find more info on you. If there's somebody who hasn't had enough video in their life of you in a hurricane or a typhoon, how can we find out more about what you've been doing?
You can follow me on most social media platforms at iCyclone. That's my handle. The letter I and the word cyclone. And yeah, if you want some good videos of just being inside crazy hurricanes, the channel is iCyclone on YouTube.
All right, so it's iCyclone, also known as Josh Morgerman. Excited to be able to have a conversation a little bit. We'll be able to have more of those on Forecasting with Friends.
All right, JD, thank you so much. Well, today marks 81 years since D-Day. And, you know, people all across the globe, especially those countries that were a part of the Allied forces at that time, are paying tribute as those troops landed on the beaches of Normandy on June 6th of 1944. Let's take you now to Normandy, France for today's ceremony.
One of those who fought in Eisenhower's Great Crusade was Sergeant John Ellery, 16th Infantry Regiment, U.S. Infantry Division, also known as the Big Red One. His words are worth remembering today. We sometimes forget that you can manufacture weapons and purchase ammunition, but you can't buy valor. And you can't pull heroes off an assembly line. As President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who addressed this nation 81 years ago, put it, the heroes of D-Day, these heroes, fought not for the lust of conquest, but to end conquest. They fought to liberate. Courage, honor, decency, civilization, democracy, all today prevailed. Today and every 6th of June, until the end of time, we should give thanks. And we should vow to protect that greatest of treasures, bought with the blood of so many heroes from the Allied nations, our freedom. Thank you very much.
Please enjoy a musical tribute in honor of our World War II veterans by the United States Army Brass Quintet.
That's a good place for us to end here today. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on Houston Live and Local from 3 to 3:30. Stay tuned here on the stream. Caroline and Rashi's up next.
Thank you.